I'm just going to do a fresh tweet. Nobody likes retweets from a retweet.
So if you guys in the chat, if you're interested in talking about health, weight loss, all kinds of, we're going to go, it's more than just about weight loss. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. We're going to get into some science. I'm not a scientist, but I know a few things. And I know enough to be able to point you to some studies and some stuff like that if you're interested out there in reading more about this. And actual like empirical studies and not just like bro science or pseudoscience. So, and then to stuff I don't like fully know, but I have an idea, I'll just be honest, say, hey, I don't know the full science on this, but this is what I know. You know, it's up to you what you want to, you know, believe. So, yeah, so I'm going to retweet that. Okay.
Okay.
Just like. Okay. So, if I share my screen, will it show up to everybody?
I don't know. If it does, it'd be a good thing because I'm look so juvenile on my streaming right now, trying to organize these boxes. You could try it. Let's see what it does.
Because I have a bunch of stuff like I have queued up.
Oh, I would love it if you could do that. Try it.
Okay. Wait. How do you share your screen in this new Skype?
I don't know. I've never done that.
Okay. More options. Share screen. Okay.
I saw it flash. You might have to turn off the camera and then do it, maybe? If someone in the chat knows, let me know. Oh, wait. Something happened. Oh, now it just says Troy. It just says your name. Now hit share.
Okay. Let me try again. Nothing?
Nope.
Hmm.
Here, let me... Well, actually, you know what? Oh! Okay, it pops... Alright, it's on my end. It pops up on a different window. So let me... Yeah. Sorry, dude.
Yeah. No problem.
Don't worry. The YouTube people are not going to see any of this juvenile shit. I'm going to edit... I'm going to postmark... And they're not going to... I'll tell you what they're not going to hear. They're not going to hear that kickboxing irrelevant story. They're not going to hear that at all. Okay, so you have that. Okay, give me a second. Let's see.
So Saboteur, we are going to dive into that like serious. Dr. Goodword, I'll address that too. I'll address everything on the agenda and whatever questions you have. Whatever I can answer, I will. If I can answer it, like if I just don't know, I'll point you to some resources that may be able to.
Okay. All right. Is your camera still? You might want to try to turn your camera back on. Because I bet I can do both. Yeah, I can do both. So I see you. Yeah, there you go. All right.
So what's being displayed to them?
You and your screen.
Okay.
And all your personal folders. I was kidding. I was kidding.
Okay. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. So let's just take a look at the agenda. Okay.
Okay.
So first of all, why are we doing this? Right. Let's talk about that. So I know you and I were kind of going tweeting a little bit about keto on Twitter, and I know Mike, Lord of the Fly, right? He was talking about it. This was a few months back, I think.
Yeah.
So it's funny because when I first started this, I have a friend who taught me how to do it back in the end of December, basically. And January 2nd is when I started. So that's about 7 months ago. And I've lost 70 pounds since then.
70?
Yeah.
Jesus. That's great. And
the dirty secret is I didn't exercise. And I'm not saying don't exercise. I'm just saying, like, I just started about 4 weeks ago. I just started going to the gym.
Yeah.
And I started doing a lot of weights because I'm trying to build some muscle. Because actually building muscle will increase your metabolism.
Yeah, it burns fat and turns the fat into muscle and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So so that's something I'm trying to do. So plus you just feel good when you start working out, and you get all these more mental benefits too. So, and physiological benefits. We can talk about that. But so the first 6 months, I didn't work out at all. So one of the things I thought was, a lot of gamers, especially in this community, but any community really, most people have a fairly sedentary lifestyle, right? Mm-hmm. So if we're going to be honest about it, and asking people to go to the gym 2 hours a day, there's a reality that is probably not going to happen, right? With most people. But if we can kind of help people get more healthy by just changing diet, like I did, I thought that would be a really good thing. So I started January 2nd, and my story goes like this. So basically, about 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with sleep apnea, and so I have to use this CPAP machine, right? Mm-hmm. So that is kind of annoying. So when I used to go to all the tournaments, I would have to bring this damn CPAP machine. It was pretty annoying. So now I travel a lot for work, so I bring it. So that's happened. But I think I've had sleep apnea for like a decade, if I had to guess. I was just not diagnosed, right?
Yeah.
So for those who are unfamiliar with sleep apnea, basically you stop breathing multiple times, like per hour. I think I was like about I stopped breathing every 90 seconds on my sleep apnea results. So it's pretty severe case, And my grandfather has it, and he's pretty thin actually. So I don't know if it's genetic or what. But, so basically, that was one health issue I had going on. The other issue is I had lost a lot of weight before, not as much as I lost now, but I had lost a lot of weight by cutting calories and exercising. And over the course of a few years, I gained it back, and actually more. So I got up to 245 pounds. I'm 5'10". I think my body fat was at the highest. It was like 43% or something.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, super high. So, and I was having so much back pain that I couldn't even stand up sometimes. Like to the point where I was taking a lot of over-the-counter painkillers. Mm-hmm. But I thought, by the time I get in my 40s, I'm 37 now, so by the time I get in my 40s, I might have to go on prescription painkillers, which is a big fear of mine because everyone, seems like gets addicted to opiates as soon as you go on that shit. So I didn't really want to do that. So I was at just kind of a crisis, like New Year's Eve, to be honest with you, right? Like a health crisis. Mm-hmm. It wasn't even, there's physical appearance, there's confidence, there's all that stuff, but it was really more about the health side of it than even that,
Yeah.
So it was really I had this friend who's been doing this keto thing for about 3 years. And, he would come over my house and he would be eating a ton of butter and bacon, and he was losing, he wasn't even that heavy to begin with, but he was super low body fat, kind of like you, I guess. So super low body fat, super lean, and eating all this fat. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? So he would tell me, and I would just be like, yeah, that sounds really cool. And it's just it wouldn't click in my head, it's working for him, but it won't work for me, kind of thing. That's what I was thinking. So, and then quite frankly, I was just addicted to carbohydrates, just flat out addicted. And I think most people are, to be honest with you. So I grew up, my mom, she's super addicted to carbohydrates, mm-hmm. and my grandmother is, so it's a family thing.
Most people are.
So for breakfast, every morning for breakfast, I either had some sugary cereal, right, and coffee. Even what I'm talking about when I was a kid, or cake or donuts every single morning. Cake. My mom was giving me this, by the way. So then every dinner, there was always a dessert every single day. So it's you train your brain, right, to get used to these this reward system, right, because that sugar provides. So I had that. So I was super addicted, right. So anyway, so I started this keto thing once he taught me how to do it, and I didn't know if I was going to be successful, but I was really desperate. So I started trying it out, and I'm not kidding you. Within the first week, my back pain was about 75% gone in 1 week. Right? I was like, I don't have to take painkillers anymore. Yeah. So I was like, oh wow, this is pretty was kind of unexpected. Like, he told me, "Oh, your back pain's probably going to go away," and I was like, "Oh yeah." And then yeah, maybe when I lose a lot of weight. And then I was like, boom, 5 days in, my back pain is almost gone. Right?
Yeah.
So 2 weeks goes by, and I'm at work, and it was the first time in years that I didn't think about, like, the whole day, I didn't think about my back. It was just gone, like, completely. Right? So I was like, well, I actually called my mom, because my mom knows I've been struggling with a lot of back pain. And I said, this is the first day in years which I haven't thought about my back at all, like, the pain's not there. You know? Mm-hmm. So that was 2 weeks into keto. In the first 2 weeks, I lost 10 pounds, probably majority of which was water weight, because when you do keto, you lose a lot of water weight at first. So, but anyway, but probably a few pounds of fat. But even that initial water weight makes you feel good because it looks good on a scale, and it kind of is motivating, to be honest with you, for new people.
Yeah, the drop in the water weight the first week or two is it's a nice little flub, but it's just a part of the first process.
Yeah, so we'll get into that when we get into keto. So, and then so my back pain basically went away. Yeah, I would say it's 95% reduced from what it was without any painkillers, and I haven't taken a painkiller in 7 months. So that's that. That's one thing keto's done for me, right? Mm-hmm. My energy level is like double what it used to be, like crazy. Like, I can function. My cognitive ability is noticeably improved. Like, I've probably read 20 books this year already. There's no bullshit. Like, seriously. Like, I have so much energy that I have to keep doing stuff. Yep. It's like it's a crazy thing. So that's going on. There's a lot of other benefits, but basically my story is that one of the things that keto gave me is, or eating this way, whether you call it keto, whatever, but it gave me an understanding about my relationship to food, which I never really understood. Mm-hmm. And I use food for reward system, and how addicted I was to sugar. And now I'm totally like, it's totally not addicted at all. Like, I don't care. I haven't cared in months. And once in a while, like on a celebration, I'll have a piece of cake, and then I'm just like, I kind of want to go back to not eating sugar anymore. Yeah. So it's like that drive of, if I fall off the wagon, like, that's totally gone. So it has totally broken my addiction to sugar, which was a big deal for me. So the reason why, real quick, the reason why the back pain is went away is because sugar, and particularly refined carbohydrates, causes inflammation. So inflammation is what causes, like, your pain, basically. So many people feel like when they go on a ketogenic diet that their inflammation is reduced, so they feel a lot less pain and issues like that. So that's one thing. So and then I'll tell one more thing, and then I'm going to get into this integral theory, which I'm just going to touch on for a second because I want people to think about this too. So it's something I applied to. So I taught my mom how to do this a week into my weight loss because she noticed a big improvement. Like, she said, 1 week into keto, she said, "What are you doing?" Like, when I first saw her, like a week later, and I said, "I don't know, I'm just doing this thing my friend taught me." And she said, "Well, teach me how to do it because you look different." And it's only 5 days, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it must have been like some physical appearance different, maybe skin, I don't know, energy level or something. So I taught her how to do it. Now, she's going through menopause, she's in her late 50s and everything, right? And so she had been gaining weight. Now, she used to be a fitness instructor. She was a health nutritionist. She was a vegan, right? Okay. And she had gained like 50 pounds, okay? And she was doing spin classes 6 days a week for an hour a day. And kept gaining weight.
Yeah.
So she was desperate, right? Like, she said, "I'll just try whatever it is." And I told her what it was. And I said, "Well, I eat a lot of bacon." So she goes, "What?" She's like, "That's crazy." I said, "Well, just try for 2 weeks. You could try anything for 2 weeks, right? It's not good. Whatever you try for 2 weeks, unless it's heroin or something, maybe that's not good to try for 2 weeks. But food, you can try for 2 weeks. It's not going to kill you, right?" So basically, she said, okay, she gave it a shot. In the first 2 weeks, she lost weight, and she hadn't been able to lose any weight in a while. Now, we know now it's probably mostly water weight, right? But that was the initial thing to keep her going, right? Mm-hmm. So to this day, in 7 months, she's lost 40 pounds. And a woman at her age, and who had gained 50 pounds over the last 4 years, just almost lost it all. So, and she's reduced her exercise because we're going to go into, for someone her age and menopause, actually too much exercise can be a bad thing because it can stress out your adrenals, like with her, she has some thyroid issues and stuff like that. So, but anyway.
I just want to add one little thing. Yeah. It is frustrating to me going to the gym consistently at 5, and I see people that are there as much as I am and more, and sometimes these guys are doing 2 a days. My wife and I talk about it. We're not judging anybody. We're really not judging anybody. We're really just we're more concerned, and we want to be helpful, but we have made a lot of acknowledgments that there's no change for 90%. Like, and it's frustrating to see that. So I've been developing this thing this past 3 or 4 months where I just say, fuck it. I see that girl, I see that guy, I see that old man, I see that young guy who's like half my age, and I'm just going to go talk to him. Like, I want to ask him about his diet. So, I've actually been, getting into conversations with tons of people, and actually it's working, and people are like, oh yeah, man, like, thank you for this. Thank you for telling me this. I didn't know anything about this. I think because I work out, I can go to Burger King and Chick-fil-A and get combo 3 extra, exercise, whatever, and drink regular Coke because, hey, man, I came here today. No, you're just being fucking counteractive. You probably burned 600 calories, but you just fucking consumed 1,500. So, you're not really, you're just screwing yourself. You're living a lie here. But, so,
all right.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the calorie thing will be an interesting topic. We'll get into that right when we get to why we get fat. So that'll be an interesting talk. So, so real quick, I just wanted to introduce you guys to something. I'm not going to get into the freaking. This is very this is a lot to it. I just want to show you guys this little model that I use at work, and I coach people with it. You can use it for anything. It's like a decision-making model. But I'm going to explain how I used it and how maybe it could help someone out there who's thinking about trying out keto or some kind of alternative way of eating for what they're eating now, whether it's keto or not, right? And how we so much focus on just just tell me what to eat, right? And I'll just do that. And that's how my first reaction was, and I kept failing, right? Mm-hmm. Or just tell me how much I got to work out or whatever. But that's one part of it. And in life, as you guys in the stream chat or probably know, that looking at things through one lens, right, is not always the best approach because everything is interconnected. Now, this might sound like some hippie shit, but hear me out, okay? So this model basically it has 4 quadrants, okay? So the horizontal part is individual and the bottom is collective. So think about that as myself and then me plus other people, okay? Those 2. And then this is like your internal self, and this is exterior, which is like obviously observable evidence, right? So that's where we get into the scientific method. Mm-hmm. So if you think about this quadrant here, this is I, interior. This is like your thoughts, your motivations, right? Your willpower. People just say, oh, that person can't lose weight because they don't have willpower, right? Mm-hmm. Like you'll hear that, stuff like that. So that's not always the case. Actually, a lot of times it's not the case. People do have willpower, but there are hormonal reasons why they can't stick with it, right? And it's because they don't have the correct knowledge as to why that's happening to their hormones. So we'll get into that. So basically, if you have the willpower and you have the motivation, right? Mm-hmm. And so that lives there, right? And your happiness and those types of things that lives in like this kind of understanding where you're at and like self-assessing yourself on that, and then getting that drive to want to do something that kind of lives there. So I already had that. Like I had the motivation to change and the willpower. Like that was there for me, right? So the bottom left was a big deal for me. That basically that is our culture. So for me, and this is at any level. So basically for me, this was the culture of me and my fiance because we live together, right? So our relationship together, because she cooks and she doesn't do keto. She grew up on rice and beans every day, basically. Okay, so now I had to really work out, get her on board with this, because without her support, this would fail 100%. Because basically at that time, I wasn't cooking for myself. I didn't know how to cook. I was really relying on her to help me in the situation, right? So I had to address that my relationship with my fiance and others around me. The top right is just basically measurements. So that lives like your body fat, your macros, your weight, your what you're eating. All that lives in this top right quadrant. And the bottom right is like our systemic, and we're going to get into this a little bit, I guess, but this is our systematic things. So for instance, for me, it was like I travel a lot. I eat out a lot because I work on the road 4 days a week, a lot of weeks. So what are the restaurants around where I stay that I can eat? What can I eat there? Like planning that out. Other things that live in here are like government regulations, doctors, right, that may influence your decisions on a lot of these things. So it's basically like, it's not just about what to eat. You have to consider different parts of your life to be successful at this. So don't just say like, oh, Troy said eat a lot of bacon and don't eat pasta, right, and I'm going to lose a lot of weight and be happy, right? It's like, yeah, maybe that's part of it, but you have to take into consideration the people in your life, yourself. You have to work on yourself, right? Like your own self-confidence, willpower, stuff like that. And then you obviously have to think about the systems around you. So where are you going to get your food? What restaurants can I go to? What can I get at the grocery store? The grocery store lives here. The grocery store is a big. You walk into it, 95% of it's garbage in the grocery store. So anyway. So I just wanted to introduce that. Like I don't want to get into any more in depth into it. But anyway, so that's a little bit about that. So I'll link some things for people if you're interested in that stuff. So maybe we can talk about the history of low fat and the disaster and the hormones of why we get fat. So basically, it's kind of ingrained in our society, in our brains, that fat makes you fat, right? So the question is, where did that come from? Because it hasn't always been that way. Okay, so for instance, my grandfather, he told me, he's 80, and he told me he grew up just eating eggs and bacon and like meat. That's what he ate every day, right? Like, yeah. And that was seen as no big deal. And then now they've been deathly afraid of eating any fat, you know. So there's a cultural shift, obviously. So basically, that started from a gentleman named Ansel Keys in the 1950s who did a study. He had a hypothesis that saturated fats led to heart disease. That was his hypothesis. So what he did was he studied the results of saturated fat consumption in 22 countries, okay, around the world. And then in 7 of the countries, 7 of the 22, he found that people that consumed a lot of saturated fat, right, that the more saturated fat you consume, the more you risk your heart disease was in those 7 countries, right? Mm-hmm. So what he did was he omitted the other 15 countries which didn't prove that hypothesis. Okay? And he then put out a 7-country study which says saturated fat leads to heart disease. Okay. Now you can go look the history of this up and look at all the countries he omitted. Okay, and the reason why he didn't put them is because they totally disproved his hypothesis in the first place. Okay? So that's a little bit about Ansel Keys. So Ansel Keys actually worked with the U.S. government once he put out this information. Now it took like another 5 to 10 years for people to do studies to try to prove, because you know in scientific method you have to have multiple studies verifying your hypothesis, right? So, and every study that was coming out was saying this study isn't accurate, like what you're saying is not true, but by that time it was too late because he had worked with the government. They came up with these dietary regulations, and eventually they came out with what we call the food pyramid. Right? So the food pyramid is, and I'll see if I can bring it up here so to show you what a disaster it is when we talk about why we get fat and why keto actually works and makes you healthy. So the food pyramid is, let's see this. So at the bottom, okay, the bottom whole part of the food pyramid, what they tell you to eat the most of is carbohydrates and glucose, basically, okay, and some vegetables. So they're basically telling you eat whole meat, whole grains, breads, potatoes, pasta, rice, fruit, okay, all this stuff, right? And not just fruit, by the way, but fruit juice, which is basically soda.
Soda sugar, yeah.
So, what happened? What's amazing is there's an interesting study on government influence on population, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all, so I'm not going to get into that. But this has kind of opened my eyes about compliance, because we, as a society, we eat way less fat than we ever used to, right? Like, so the studies prove that actually the compliance is very high in a low-fat diet in the United States. But if you look at the rate of obesity since the food pyramid came out, okay, and so let's do a little bit of I have a little I had a little chart here. Oh, I'll bring it up later. So basically, there was a chart I can link later, which basically talks about the obesity rate since the food pyramid, so in the last 30 years, right? And it was like 12% of people were considered overweight or obese back and then, and now it's like over 40% in some of the United States. It's some crazy number, and they predict by 2030 it'll be over 50%, like obese people in the United States, right? Mm-hmm. So we're talking about like a 3x to 4x multiple of obesity in the United States since the food pyramid was introduced, right? So obviously something's wrong. The gym memberships are higher, have gone up in the last 30 years at the same rate as the the fat consumption has gone down, right? Mm-hmm. So people are working out more, per capita, right? People are eating less fat, yet the obesity rates are going up and up and up. So let's talk about why we get fat, right? So people think that why we get fat is because you just eat more calories than you burn. Okay, like anything in life, it's not. If it was that simple, nobody would be fat. To be honest with you, if it was like everybody knows that, right? Like everybody knows that, but yet like the compliance is almost impossible for a population. Okay, mm-hmm. And the reason why is because of hormones. Okay, and physics. Okay, and biology are not the same. So the way your body works is a super complicated machine inside, right? It's super complicated. It's way more complicated than I think, honestly, anybody like fully understands. We're still discovering a lot of things about insulin and cortisol and hormones and how all this is interconnected, right? Mm-hmm. But for the most part, think about this. If I wanted to make you fat, okay, if I injected insulin in you, you would get fat, okay? There's study after studies that show insulin injections cause weight gain. All right, so we know that insulin, through scientific evidence, causes weight gain. So and there's another reason for that there's multiple reasons. One is in the presence of insulin, you cannot burn fat. So insulin is like a hormone that your pancreas releases to offset blood sugar levels. That's what it's for. Okay, so what happens is, when your blood sugar spikes, your pancreas releases this insulin to bring it down, because your body has to be at a certain blood sugar range to maintain itself, to maintain homeostasis, okay, to not get sick, basically. What happens is, when your insulin is up, the insulin is like the little guy that says, or girl or whatever, that says, yeah, so what are we going to do with this energy? Are we going to burn it, or are we going to store it, right? And also, when the insulin's up, you're not going to be able to access your stored body fat. Now, you can burn energy with insulin. That is true. Like, you can burn dietary calories, right? I'm not saying you cannot. Of course you can. But you're not going to actually access your body fat storage while the insulin is raised, okay? And what we do is, as a society, is we constantly raise our insulin, because the most insulinogenic raising food is refined sugar and corn syrup, right? It's number one, those top two. And then refined carbohydrates, right? And so you're talking about pasta, breads, rice, things like that, right? So number one is, high fructose corn syrup, sugar, processed carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates. Then also right up there with that is fructose, right? So we think that fruit is healthy, and in moderation. I'm not saying it's not healthy, but to strip the fiber out of the fruit makes it unhealthy. Okay, because what you're doing is, the fiber acts as a blood glucose, a blood sugar kind of barrier, not a barrier, but basically it kind of offsets the impact of the insulin spike with fiber. That's what it does, right? So that's why nature has provided us with fruit with fiber. And what we do is we strip it out and we just drink the shit, right? And we're just constantly spiking our insulin. So like if you have breakfast, which is orange juice, which is basically soda, because usually it's barely orange juice anyway. And even if it was pure orange juice, it's the fiber stripped out anyway, right? And then we have like pancakes or a waffle or something with syrup, and then potatoes, right? It's a pretty common breakfast if you go out for breakfast, right? That's gonna keep your insulin spiked for like pretty much for the whole day. And then when your insulin crashes, then you feel like shit and tired and you have no energy, right? Mm-hmm. So this is what insulin does. So insulin is the regulator for a body fat and for energy and those types of things, right? So the reason why the ketogenic diet really works, going back to keto, is it's not so much about carbs. It's although it is, but it's really about insulin. Okay? So it's more about like, can we keep our insulin super low as much as possible to get access to our fat stores? That's one part of it, right? And two, to not crash and to have a sustained energy level throughout the day. So there's a benefit there of energy level sustenance. So that's one part about it. So I'll go into keto for a second. So ketosis is a state of fasting, basically. That's what ketosis is. So fasting literally meaning not eating, okay? So if you were to not eat for 3 days, your body would naturally go into this state of ketosis, okay? So when it goes into ketosis, all that really means is your body is using its own body fat for energy production. So normally we use glucose as our energy, and we get that through our carbohydrate consumption, right? So that's fine, and glucose is the energy that's most common around the world now because of the way that people's diets have changed over the last few centuries, almost like or thousands of years if you think about it. But you could argue that human beings have been around, I don't know the exact number, but something like 150,000 years or maybe more, something like that. Mm-hmm. Or I don't know the exact, somebody in the chat knows, maybe you can tell me. So I think it's something. So 150,000 years, right? So when did like agriculture get introduced into that timeline, right? And then when did refining carbohydrates come into that timeline? If you think about it, like it's such a small amount of time by the time we get to how we eat right now, right? So from an evolutionary perspective, human beings didn't eat 6 times a day, right, until like the last 20 years, if you think about it. Okay, out of all of human existence, okay, so human beings, like you would have to go and hunt for your food. Most people, right? Mm-hmm. You would have to go hunt. So you might not eat for 2 days, 3 days, right? You might not eat for days, and then when you eat a bunch of food. And what did you eat? Mostly fat, for the most part, right? Now there were different fat and protein. There's different parts of the world where they had access to different vegetables and fruits and everything, but they weren't farming. They just went there, they saw it, they ate it, they consumed it, and then they moved on. They went to hunt, right? It's not like what it is now. They didn't have the access that we do. So it's theorized that the original human and majority of human existence, people were fueled off of fat. So ketosis is a state of actually fueling your body from fat. That's what it is. So it's a total metabolic shift from regular energy. It's from carbohydrate-based energy. So what you're doing is you're actually shifting your body over to using a new fuel source. And the cool thing about ketosis is, the reason why they call that is because when you burn fat, or you burn dietary fat or body fat, regardless, your body produces something called ketones, which are an alternate energy source. Okay, and the ketones can actually go through the blood-brain barrier and give you sustained energy, long energy. So carbohydrates are high impact energy, okay, but you crash when you eat a lot of them, right? Ketones, if you produce a lot of ketones, you have very sustained energy that's long lasting. So it's a different type of energy source. So people that do like long distance running, cycling, stuff like that, a lot of them are ketogenic people because they can go long periods of time without tiring and without crashing and stuff like that, right? So that's one part of it. So that's what ketosis is. Ketosis is using your own body fat for an energy source and producing ketones. Okay. Now, what does that have to do with eating food, right? Because we're talking about fasting. So what it has to do with eating food is this. Back in the 1920s, there was a scientist who was at Mayo Clinic, and he was working on a cure for epilepsy in kids. Okay, he was trying to find a cure for epilepsy. And he found that when kids would fast for 3 days or more, that they were having reduced seizures. Okay. So he tried to figure out, like, why is this happening? So he theorized that it was ketones that was doing this. Like, using ketones as an energy source was, the ketones were so good for the brain that it was actually settling the kid's brain. It's not a scientific way of explaining it, I know, but settling the kid's brain and making them have less seizures. Okay, so he said, well, and now you couldn't even do these kind of trials. You couldn't, like, tell people they can't eat for 2 weeks, you know, like in clinical studies. But back then they had a lot more freedom. So he would do like 1 week, 2 weeks, no food, and he was getting crazy results. Like, some of the results you were getting were like 80% of the people were like not even having seizures anymore after a certain amount of time and not eating, you know, like totally gone. So he said, all right, can I simulate this with food? So he created a diet, and he called it the ketogenic diet. Whether he labeled it that or not, I'm not sure. Somebody did back then. He called it the ketogenic diet, and basically that original diet is not what you and I do who do keto. That original diet is different. That diet is 90% calories from fat and less than 2% carbohydrates. Okay. So that's called a therapeutic ketogenic diet. So it's like 90% fat, 8% protein, and like 2% carbs or less. Right? So, and that's what he started giving to these kids. And what he found was that this therapeutic ketogenic diet was having the same results as extended fasting. Okay. So he found that by achieving a certain amount of macronutrient ratios of carbs, proteins, and fats, that you can mimic a state of ketosis like you were fasting without fasting. Okay, so that's what he discovered. So Johns Hopkins and other clinics still use the ketogenic diet for epileptic patients. And what's amazing is, a lot of times when they put kids on this ketogenic diet for a certain amount of time, they take them off it and they never have seizures again, even without the diet. Like, the ketones actually regulate their brain. It's like an amazing thing.
We have a neighbor that has I think a 5-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And unfortunately she was born and she has seizures all the time. And they looked into it and they tried it, and I don't think she's had a seizure in maybe a year now. Because she's been doing that. It's just, we actually talked to them Sunday at the pool, and they were asking us about what we're doing now and what they're doing now, how it's going, and before that, there was like ambulances a lot. There was a lot of issues, and they would have to, and you know, it's sad, it sucks, but that is I don't know. That's, if that happened to me, I would definitely do it with my kids. Because it worked for them. So I can't imagine having to go through that. Yeah.
So there's a movie on Netflix. Meryl Streep is in it, actually. No, it's on YouTube, actually. It's free on YouTube. It's called First Do No Harm. It's a true story about something called the Charlie Foundation. It's the start of this Charlie Foundation. Mm-hmm. And basically, in the 90s, right? So this ketogenic diet thing had been like, for epilepsy, had been going for like 40 years, since the 20s, right? It was like the main treatment. And then guess what happened? The drug industry came in, said, no, we need to create drugs to simulate this, right? And they started creating these drugs, and then, of course, the medical community goes with the drug route. They always pretty much go drugs first, the most doctors, if we're going to be honest. Okay? So they rely on these drug studies and everything like that. So this movie is a true story. Meryl Streep is in it. It's about a mother whose son gets epilepsy. I guess was born with it, but it starts to get triggered around 6 years old or something, right? And they're going to the doctor and trying to figure. And I'm not going to ruin the ending, but I'll tell you this: basically the kid is almost dead, right? Like, is going through like hell, and the doctors like just try one drug after another, and the mother basically has to steal her own kid. And what she does is she researches on her own. She goes to the library every single day, and tries to find a cure and finds out about this ketogenic diet from the 20s. It's such a crazy true story. And tells the doctor, we need to do this. Doctor says, no, there's another drug. The mother's like, my kid's going to die. Freaking steals the kid. Steals her own kid. And, like, shit's illegal, actually, to take it out of a doctor's custody, like, for some laws and stuff like that. And takes her to freaking Johns Hopkins, and it's like a crazy story. And the kid freaking never has a seizure again. I know that's the end of the story, but you gotta see this, man. Like, it's like the kid goes from, like, basically being a normal healthy kid to having crazy seizures all the time, being epileptic, to being, like, tortured from this medication. The medication's like killing this kid, right? And to becoming a normal person after going to Johns Hopkins, right? And it's like, you know what? It's very eye-opening. It's actually kind of infuriating to think, like, we put our trust in a system. I'm not even blaming the doctors, but we put our trust in our system who values. This is the conspiratorial part. It's not a conspiracy. Let's be honest. Money makes the world go round. Okay, like, especially capitalism. Nothing wrong with capitalism. It made this country. It's an awesome system for, you know, for economy, right? But there are downsides to everything. Okay, so a downside to everything is that money. It basically rules the industry, right? So if you can't make money off of it, it's really hard to make money off of people saying, "Hey, eat some butter and don't eat carbs," right? And you won't have seizures, or don't eat. Like, where's the money to be made there? So there's a lot of more running a drug. So I'm going to get past that. So that movie's called First Do No Harm. It's on YouTube. There's a movie on Netflix called The Magic Pill. And it's a documentary about paleo and keto. Actually, it's about both. And they follow, like, 5 different families. And some of the families have epileptic kids, right? And they put them on a ketogenic diet, and you can see the progression. And then they go to a family who has an autistic kid, right? And they put them on a ketogenic diet, and you can see what happens to the autistic kid. And it's funny is that since my mom, she's a pastor of a church. Now, that may seem funny to some of you, but they don't know me. But my mom is a pastor of a church. And so she asked me if I would help start a ketogenic, like, support group, because a lot of people wanted to do it because they saw all this weight she was losing, right? So she started this weekly meetup, this keto meetup in her church. And now it's grown to, like, 75 people a week. Right? Mm-hmm. And it's insane. I've spoken there, like, 3 times this year. And every time I go back, everyone's, like, way thinner. It's, like, crazy. So it's kind of funny. So the Magic Pill. Yeah. So the cool thing is one of the families in the Magic Pill lives in the town where my mom's church is. Okay. So this guy, Barry, his daughter, who has autism, they're in this town in New Jersey where my mom's church is. So they actually, the father of this autistic daughter came to our support group and spoke about everything that happened since the movie, what's been going on, how's it going with the diet, like, how's his daughter doing, and gave us an update and answered all the questions. It was an awesome thing. I got some pictures with me and him. So that, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, it's called The Magic Pill. It's on Netflix. But yeah, it's a lot about paleo too, because I think we were talking about paleo. Yeah, so basically, there's a huge public crisis of what we call metabolic syndrome. Okay, so metabolic syndrome is heart disease, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, right? All of these symptoms, all of these diseases, which are killing people, right? Like becoming the leading cause of death in the United States, right? Heart disease, type 2 diabetes, which leads to heart disease, things like that, right? And what actually causes metabolic syndrome? So what causes metabolic syndrome is the same reason why we actually get fat as we get older. There's a couple reasons. One is metabolism slows down about every decade. That just happens, okay? So there's one part of it. That's one part of it. But two, so you have to keep that knowledge as you get older, as you get into your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. You're like, okay, my metabolism is going to slow down. Okay, one thing. Two is insulin resistance is the cause of all this, actually. Because remember we talked about how insulin, if I wanted to make you gain weight, I would just inject insulin. Right? So what happens is the more insulin your body produces, the more resistant your cells become to it. Okay. So what happens is, like, your body just keeps making more and more and more the more sugar and carbohydrates you eat, okay? And the more it makes, your cells start to get flooded with this information of insulin, and you start saying, no, like, it's enough, right? And your body just keeps making it and making it. And then what happens is, after a while, okay, your cells are no longer receptive to that insulin anymore, and then it goes in your bloodstream, and basically you develop type 2 diabetes. That's what happens. So type 2 diabetes is caused by insulin resistance, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a vicious cycle where the more insulin resistant you become, the harder and harder it is to lose weight. Okay? Because the more insulin, so as your cells are starting to ignore your insulin response, your body has to produce more insulin to get the blood sugar down. Okay? Mm-hmm. So think about that. So now your body has to produce more insulin to get the blood sugar to this homeostasis over and over again over the years, right? So therefore, you're going to keep gaining weight the more you keep doing that, right? So now, if you have, there are genetic factors to this too, of course. Different people have different metabolisms. You know, I'm just talking about like someone who is noticeably gaining weight and like, why the hell am I gaining weight? I think I'm doing the right thing. I'm eating a low-fat diet. I'm exercising, but yet like I keep gaining weight. That's a common thing. So I'm talking about like in a general population, just going by what causes weight gain. There are exceptions. My uncle's like 55 and he drinks like 10 sodas a day, and he can't put on weight, right? Like I think actually something might be wrong with him, to be honest with you. But I guarantee you he is developing insulin resistance even though he's not getting fat, and he may develop type 2 diabetes. There are runners, actually. There's many cases. There's a guy named Peter Attia, who's a very well-known guy in the medical community, and especially in low-carb, paleo, keto community. And he developed type 2 diabetes, and he was a professional athlete runner. Okay. So, and the reason is because he developed insulin resistance, but he just didn't get the weight gain. Different people's metabolism, genetics, they just get the weight gain, right? So, anyway, so the more insulin you produce, the more resistant your body becomes to it. The more resistant your body becomes to it, the more you have to produce. The more you produce, you can't get to your fat stores. Okay, it's like a cycle over and over and over again. Okay, so what ketogenic diet does, one of the things it does is it reverses insulin resistance. So, which is the actual miracle about it, if you ask me. Like the miracle thing, because that's what's people are able to have sustained weight loss because of that. So there's a billion studies about like ketogenic diet. You can go on YouTube and look at people's like long-term results of weight loss. And the reason why is because they've actually reduced and in some cases reversed their insulin resistance. So now their body is a lot more sensitive to insulin. So when they eat carbohydrates, right, and when they do eat carbohydrates, their cells can receive it, and it doesn't have to create more, which means you don't have to gain as much weight. The chances of gaining weight are less because of that, right? So there are biological markers which you can test for insulin resistance, like fasting blood glucose is one, but that's not the best one. The one is your triglyceride. Triglyceride levels is a big indicator for insulin resistance, like a pretty big one. So if you ever people get blood work, you want to look at that. So anyway, so that's a little bit about why we get fat. So maybe before we get to this list, maybe we can just talk about like keto basics and stuff. Mm-hmm. I talked about the history already. So what is a ketogenic diet? So the ketogenic diet is basically it's a high-fat diet. People think it's just a low-carb diet. That is not true. It's a high-fat, low-carb diet, moderate protein. Okay. So the reason for that, there's many reasons. One is, remember, doing a ketogenic diet, you are going to change over your fuel source to using fat as a fuel. So guess what that means? When your body doesn't have any more dietary energy coming in, right? So you're in a resting state, okay? It's going to go to your body fat for fuel because that's what it prefers now, and that's what gives it the ketones, okay? And that's how people are. I've lost 20% body fat in 7 months without exercising. Yep. So how do you explain that? And I never once counted my calories, okay? So I'm not saying I ate more calories than I used to. I'm not even saying that. I'm saying I never worried about it. I just worried about the keto macros, and I did it, okay? So an interesting thing, I'm going to get to calories real quick. There's an interesting study here. There's quite a few studies, but this is the mega study. So remember I tweeted about science, so we're going to get some studies. So now I geek out about this stuff, okay? So there was a study done, paid for by the U.S. taxpayer dollars, by the way, $415 million, okay, for this study. What they were trying to do is prove a correlation between low-fat diets and reduced cardiovascular risk. Okay? That's what they were trying to do. So what they did was they took 48,000 women, okay, put them in randomized control groups, and you guys can read the study. Put them in randomized control groups. $400 million, by the way, of our money. It just drives me. It's mind-blowing. They tried to prove this hypothesis, which many people have known for years that's not true. So they tried to prove it, right? So they said, okay, we're going to do this. So they took dietitians, okay? They took a part of this control group, a part of the group in the study, and compared them to a control group. So the part of the group, they had registered dietitians follow them around for 7 years, okay? Put them on a calorie-restricted diet for 7 years, right? A caloric deficit of 300 calories per day from what they believed was their resting metabolic rate. I believe that's when you read the study, you can see it, okay? So what that would tell you is they hypothesized that over the course of 7 years that these people will lose like X amount of weight because you're reducing your calories 300 calories a day for 7 years, and you're going to lose a ton of weight, right? So compared to the control group, and they put them on an exercise program. They put them on. You can see it. All the information is here. Let's see. There's another one. Yeah, this is a similar one here. It's all in here. There's a more detailed one here. Okay, so all the information's here. What they did was they put them on a low-fat diet, an exercise program. Okay, for 7 years they followed this group around, compared them to the control group. Okay, now I'm going to show you a chart here. Okay. This was what actually happened. Okay, the black markers. All right, this is the group that was with the dietitians and the eat less, exercise more group. Okay, these are people they just eat whatever the hell you want. Okay, now they split it up out of 50,000 people. Right, first year, the study group lost a ton of weight. Right, like as you would expect, they cut their calories. Okay? Now they kept the calories low for the next 7 years in this group and kept exercising. Look what happened. What they found at the end of the results, okay, is that by everyone who's done this, on average, not even 1 single kilogram was lost between the two groups. Not 1 single kilogram difference. They gained all the weight back while reducing the calories. Okay, so what that tells you is people that are overweight, okay? Now, if you're an athlete and you're in your 20s or 30s and you're an athlete and you have a high metabolism and you start cutting your calories, you're going to get shredded, most likely, okay? Because you have a high metabolism, right? But the thing is, as anyone knows, when bodybuilders are trying to put more muscle, they eat more calories, right? And then their metabolism, you can actually increase your metabolism by caloric intake, depending on how much muscles you build and stuff. But that's where the bodybuilding stuff comes in. So think about the average person who's not a bodybuilder, who's not exercising 2 hours a day, who's just cutting their calories, maybe exercising a few times a week, stuff like that, right? That's what this represents. So what they found was that people gain the weight back. The reason for that actually is what they found when they did the studies at the end was that their resting metabolic rate compared to this group was far less, meaning the body actually slowed down its metabolism, okay, to adjust to the calories being consumed. So, like, they went from consuming, let's say, 2,000 calories to 1,500 calories a day. I'm just going to throw a number out there. All the numbers are in here, by the way. So what their body did was said, okay, and then what their body did was say, oh, no, like, we can't have this. So basically, the body said, we're just going to cut our caloric need down because we don't need this many calories anymore. And guess what happens? The weight goes back up, right? And now, your body can actually reduce it below what you're eating. It says we don't need it anymore, right? So your body has like this really smart system that's not going to you're not going to be able to trick it long term okay? Because it's going to think it's going to die. If you're not feeding it enough, what it's used to, your body's going to be like, well, we got to do something about this because we're not. This is not a survivable state, right? So your body's always trying to survive, right? So think about fat, right? Now we're going to get off calorie for a second. Think about fat, and don't think the body fat. You guys who are watching this, if you have it on your body, right? If you're overweight like I was, now I'm still like I'm 23% body fat, which is not like, you know, some super cut thing or whatever, right? But I was 43% body fat in January, so that's a crazy difference.
A huge difference.
Right.
Like, I'm like, do you? I keep going, but I swear you got to do before and after photos. You got. I mean, people see you now, but you should show like a before photo. Just.
I will. You
don't have to. I'm just saying. I mean, it would really put it out there and say, "This is what it looks like."
Yeah. So basically, what was I just talking about? Oh, I was talking about fat. So there's a mental shift when you do the ketogenic diet where you start looking at your fat. Your fat is just energy waiting to be used, actually. So when you can switch your metabolism over to using ketones as energy, your body fat is just energy waiting to be used. And it's like, why not unlock it, right? So you can unlock it by reducing your insulin to allow your body to start getting rid of some of this insulin resistance and start accessing some of your body fat for energy. That's how that is the only explanation I have for how I was able to rapidly lose that much body fat without counting calories and without working out. That's the only explanation I have. So that actually is just, you know, metabolically that makes sense as far as like using your own body fat for fuel. So that's what the ketogenic diet does. So ketogenic diet. So people will say, well, what the hell is this? So basically it's the standard ratio, and you can adjust this on a daily basis, it's fine. But basically it's about 75% of your calories are going to come from fat. Okay, so it's anywhere from 70% to 80%. Some people do 65. The idea is that you want it to be pretty high, okay, regardless. So I usually always shoot for that 70-75% range personally. That's what I usually shoot for. When I first started keto, I logged every single thing I ate in an app. In fact, I would plan my day out before I even did it. So I put the food in the app, look at my macros, and say, "Oh, here's my plan." That actually taught me how to eat. That's how I did it. But now I don't do that anymore. I just pretty much know what to eat. And I still will use the app from time to time just to check things out and see how it's going. But so basically, 1 gram of fat equals 9 calories, and 4 grams of carbs and protein equals 4 calories. So an even number of grams is not an even number of what they call calories from fat. If that makes sense, right? So if you eat 100 grams of protein and 100 grams of fat, it's not 50-50 calories from fat. It's 9-to-4 ratio, right? So the cool thing is you don't have to do the math because the apps do it for you. So you can use MyFitnessPal. You can use I use something called My Macros. It's just a different app. My Macros Plus, that's the one I like, but you can use I know a lot of people use MyFitnessPal. And basically what you do is you log your food either before or after you eat it. That's up to you. I encourage you to start with before if you're going to do it. And then you can play around the app. Oh, if I ate this for dinner, how would that affect my macros, kind of thing, right? So all you're trying to do is you're trying to get your body to a state where you're forcing it to use fat as a fuel source. That's the first thing. So the way you're going to do that is you're going to give it a lot of fat, and you're going to give it basically almost no carbs. Okay, so the percentage of carbs on a ketogenic, what we call a modified ketogenic diet, which is we do because we know that we're not doing the one that the kids did, like Johns Hopkins, which is like 90% fat. That's just unsustainable in a daily life for most people, and it actually has some side effects when you don't eat enough protein. So like some hair loss and things like that. So the modified ketogenic diet is what 99% of people in the world do that do keto, which is basically a 70 to 80% fat ratio. Some people do 65 to 15 to 25% protein, and then like anywhere from 0 to 7% carbs. Some people say 10, some people say 15%. I would pretty much never ever go over 10% carbs unless it's like a day I'm intentionally, if it's a birthday party or something like that. Otherwise, I pretty much never go over 10% carbs. So what that means is like I get all my carbs from either green vegetables or nuts or There's a little bit of carbs in like some dairy products. So like if you drink half and half, there's some carbs in that. It's not a lot, but there's some in there. But basically, I don't eat any grains, pasta, bread, no sugar, rice. I mean, nothing. That's in order to do keto, you basically have to do that, especially the first couple months. Now, there's a process called fat adaptation, or they call it keto adapted. What that means is after a certain amount of time, your body actually starts preferring fat as a fuel source. So when you first start keto, you're going to feel like different people react to it differently. Some people feel like low energy, right? And that's to be expected because what you're doing, your body's used to using glucose, so you're not giving it glucose. So you probably are going to feel low energy for the first couple of days, most likely, right? But if you stick with it, you'll start to get some benefits. It takes anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks for most people to get fully fat adapted. And what that means is your body will actually start preferring fat as a fuel source. So even when you eat some carbs, it still fuel itself from the fat. It's actually its preferred fuel source. Okay? So an interesting thing, and I know, Brent, you were talking about some problems you were having with working out. Maybe we can talk about that. But and I don't work out anything like you do, so you have a lot more experience with that. But I do know about some studies. So I'll give you an example. And I'm curious to see what you think about this, because it sounds to me like this is not what you've experienced. So you correct me if I'm wrong. But there was a study done when it comes to stored glycogen in muscles. And what they did was they took 2 runners, okay, well, 2 groups of runners, actually, and not just 2 people, like a whole control group and another group. And they put them on a marathon. What they found was that their starting glucose, glycogen amount in their muscles, right, were different, actually. So I don't know the exact number. I can find the study. I don't have it up on my screen. But basically, for argument, I'm just going to throw out a number to make it super simple, okay? So let's say that the non-keto group was like 800 grams of stored glycogen or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And the keto group was like half that or some number. It was a lot less, okay? Meaning the keto group has naturally less stored glycogen in their muscle at the beginning, okay? But what they found was after the marathon, when they tested it again, both groups had the same exact amount of stored glycogen, which is that's a very interesting thing, because if you think about it, if one's starting at 800, right, and one's starting at 400, and they both end up at 200, what does that tell you? Okay, so like that actually tells you that being fat adapted, your body can can actually use carbohydrates more efficiently. So your body's not going to just like say, you know, screw these glycogen, I'm just going to dump it. It's going to say, no, like I have to use this more efficiently. So there are studies out there. So I'm curious as to what you had an experience with, because I know you said you had some problems. So maybe you can talk about that. So we can talk about negatives or whatever. Not everything has to be positive. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So like when I first started this, and I started the workout routine the same time I tried the lifestyle change, was like I would say the first week was exceptionally hard because I was doing prior to that like these CrossFit workouts, like the kickboxing, boxing, running. I mean, just all sorts of crazy high intensity 700 calorie burning workouts. I was doing powerlifting some also, and then to also go to keto at the same time while keeping that up and just not changing it. If anything, I was trying to go even harder. I would lose energy quicker. I would go in to an hour workout in 30 minutes, just feel like depleted, dead.
Right.
But I kept going. I pushed myself through it. I found that just like sipping some water, like lemon water or something, during my workout helped. But it was after the first week or two, I actually started to feel the opposite. I actually started to feel completely energized. I felt like I could do whatever. I feel like I could. So it was like this 2-week lull that I started out with, and I'd say by the middle of January, I hit a stride to where I felt like, oh shit, like I feel great. Like I'm sleeping better. I feel better. I just feel lighter. I feel different. And I think it was my body just kind of going through the change. Like if you drink coffee as much as I do, like 5 or 6 times a day, and you just don't drink coffee for a month, it felt like that for like a week or two, like headaches and stuff. But it was really just I think it was my body just going through a complete change because, I mean, I did it to the core. I mean, I would say the first 4 to 5 months, I probably kept every day around 30 carbs or less. And all those carbs were coming from vegetables, cauliflower rice, which literally has like half a carb. I drink these Premier protein drinks that I get at Costco. You can look it up. It's 160 calories, and it's like 3 carbs, but it's 30 grams of protein. I know and like sometimes I went overboard with the protein. I know eating too much protein can actually it puts you in some state where the protein starts becoming sugar.
I can talk about that if you want.
Yeah. So basically, I did the ketogenic diet all the way up till April, May. It was actually kind of cool. I mean, it was nice knowing that I could just eat chicken, steak, eggs, salmon, fish, ham, turkey, roast beef, pot roast. I mean, that was basically what I was eating all the time. Like eggs. I said eggs. Egg whites.
Right.
Like goat cheese dishes. I mean, just like crazy stuff. And I would do salads as well. And on those days, I would definitely hit around 30 carbs because of the greens and stuff. But
sure. But there's also a concept of net carbs too, which we haven't talked about.
Yeah, true. Yeah. I did it consistently up until around May, and then around May, I felt like as I was pushing myself harder and harder and harder, it was I then started to feel like I had lost so much fast, and I started feeling completely depleted. So I said, you know, this might be a good time. I've done this for 4 or 5 months. This might be a good time right now for me to start introducing like the good carbs. So all I added to my diet was I ate like when I wake up in the morning, I just ate oatmeal with almond milk and blueberries on top. And I ate that every single breakfast for like 2 months. But past that breakfast at like 8 a.m. or 7 a.m., whatever it was, past that, it was keto. So, well, it wasn't. It was keto mindset. Like it just no carbs, straight protein. Yeah.
Low carb, high fat. You were doing even after the morning. You're saying?
Yeah. I mean, but dude, that oatmeal. I mean, that's like I don't know, like 100 carbs, 70 carbs. I mean, it's a lot of fucking carbs. But I would consider
a non-keto low carb diet, like low carb, and according to modern standards, would be like under 150 grams of carbs. Because most people consume like over 400 grams of carbs a day.
Yeah, I definitely clocked in around 20 to 30, and I felt like doing that for 4 to 5 months just made me depleted. That's why I felt like I need a fucking grain or something. Like, so I started eating like oatmeal, and then the magical thing that happened, I felt even like stronger and more energy like when I started adding that. So I was like, oh man, I want to keep doing this. So yeah, I've basically been doing that for the past 2-3 weeks. I have been kind of stuck around 196. So I'm now getting to the point after hearing and talking about this, going into like another run of straight keto and seeing how I can handle that. Like with football season coming up, that's the whole reason why. That's the whole reason I gained I was up to 234 pounds. Like I work some Monday night games, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, on the road, traveling, hotels, out with friends, out with coworkers, come home. Oh shit, kids want to go out, and the wife wants to go. There's just a lot of. You have to have a lot of discipline. You have to have a lot of knowledge about what you're putting into your body, no matter where you are. If you're driving, home at night from Carolina Panthers game, 12 a.m., and nothing's open but Taco Bell, you need to know what you can eat at Taco Bell. You got to get a power bowl. No rice, no beans, and it's actually like I think it's something like crazy, like 350 calories, and the protein's great, and it's like 8 carbs, 10 carbs, or whatever. So just being knowledgeable when you're doing this stuff and being aware of all your options at all times of the day. That's very important. But yeah, I bring up the football season thing because it starts back in 2 weeks, so it's almost like I'm going against that demon again, and I'm like super ready for it. I'm not going to gain all that weight back that I did last year. And I'll tell you something else. We talked about the whole fit gamer thing. Like the first time, I was in 2010, 2011, 2012. I was like 175, 180. I was lanky, not really muscular, but just like 170, 180, like just lanky. And then like when I pushed myself to get second in Evo in 2014, I gained like 40 pounds. And yeah, I mean and that's actually why I stopped playing Injustice 2. I'm like, I hate who I am. Like I don't like how I look. I don't like how I feel. This isn't me. Like I need to get. And that was around the year in 2015. When I did that chasing the cup thing, I saw me on TV and I was like, I can see the weight gain. Like I can see it's really pissing me off. So like literally the next day I signed up to that UFC gym, and I went about 3 to 4 days a week, but didn't fix my diet. And that's when I fixed my diet, was this past December in 2017, and it just made all the difference. You can work out 7 days a week, you can power lift, you can run miles, you can do all this shit. But if your diet isn't set, your diet isn't correct, and you have no idea the rhyme and reasoning for what you are eating and putting in your body, none of it's going to matter. You're wasting your goddamn time. You have to know what you're doing. Yep,
totally agree. So awesome. So thanks for that story. So I would say, personally for me, my approach is this. I don't think ketogenic diet, like I wouldn't say every single person should be on ketogenic diet. Like I'm not dogmatic about it. I'm just sharing what happened to me, right? Like the benefits I'm getting out of it. So we want to try it out. Maybe it won't work for you. I don't know. But I can tell you what I would tell anybody is that stop eating sugar and refined carbohydrates and eat more natural fats. That would be like, whether it's keto or not, that would be my recommendation for probably everything. So anyway, so let's talk about protein for a second. So there's some misconceptions about that, I think. So your brain needs approximately 15% glucose to function, okay? Which means the other part of it functions off of fat, which is pretty interesting. So your brain actually is made up of, this is where I'm going to get really unscientific, but you can Google this part if you want. Basically, your brain requires an extreme amount of cholesterol, actually, okay? So cholesterol is really, really good, dietary cholesterol, but generally just cholesterol in general, whether it's dietary or endogenous. So there's this term I'm going to use called exogenous and endogenous. So what that means is that exogenous means that you consume it externally. Okay. So because I'm going to talk about exogenous ketones in a bit. So but your body produces way more cholesterol per day than you could ever probably eat in a day. Okay, like your body actually produces it itself because every cell in your body needs cholesterol. Okay, and your brain really needs it. Okay, so what happens is when you eat cholesterol, it actually balances itself out. Like again, your body's really smart. Like it's not going to just say like this guy's eating cholesterol and I'm just going to keep making a shit ton of cholesterol and it's just going to overload your body. That's not how it works, right? Like your body's always trying to maintain that state of homeostasis, right? So going back to protein, right? So there are only 2 essential macronutrients you need to survive. Those are fat and protein. If you don't have those, you will die. Okay, like you can look that up. Those are known things. Okay, your brain needs fat, okay, to survive, right? And your body doesn't make fat. That's the one thing, and it doesn't make protein either. Okay, so you need to eat those things to survive. The thing about it is, your body does not need carbs. It's the only macronutrient that's not necessary, and the reason why is because your liver actually will produce glucose from protein. Okay, so the protein you consume on a ketogenic diet, for the most part, is getting converted into glucose, but that's the glucose your body needs to function properly. It's not like an overuse of glucose. You know what I mean? So your body says, well, so that process is called gluconeogenesis. It literally just means creating new glucose. Okay, so so basically your liver will create glucose from protein. That's why you don't need it. You don't need carbs ever, actually. Like you don't technically need it, like to live a life, to be alive. Okay, that's all I'm saying, right? Now you could argue that if you have a certain amount of type of working out you need, okay, that's a different story. I'm just talking about survival, right? So your body will make the protein for glucose. So that's called gluconeogenesis. The reason why ketogenic diet doesn't work if it's a high protein diet is 2 reasons, actually. One is you are going to have a lot of gluconeogenesis and a certain threshold. Everybody's body is different, though. Some people can handle a lot more, and some people can't. The only way you can truly test that is to use a blood ketone meter. I can talk about that if people want, but basically, and that will tell you the amount of ketones in your blood, that blood ketone meter. But anyway, so you can say like, hey, I just ate like nothing but grilled chicken for 4 days, and then test your blood ketones to see where they're at. And if you don't have any, then you know you got kicked off by that amount of protein. You know, it's kind of like you have the trial and error, really. But that's why there's the general rule about keto is you stay in those ranges, 15 to 25%. Some days you eat 30%, it's okay, right? It's no big deal. Some days you eat less. As long as you stay in a fairly good range, it's fine. You start going to 60% protein every day, then your body you probably won't be ketosis anymore after most time. That's what'll happen. So sometimes I go to this place called Fogo de Chao, which is a Brazilian steakhouse, and it's all you can eat meat. Okay? And it's every kind of meat you can possibly want. I mean, they have anything from any kind of steak you want: ribeye, sirloin.
Yeah, So for my wife's 30th birthday last week, we went to Fogo de Chao, which is like Brazilian steakhouse, and I probably had 32 ounces of meat.
yeah, me too, man. So I'm doing keto all the time, right? But once in a while, I'll go to Fogo de Chao and just go nuts, right? So just go like, and that's fine. And I measure my ketones, and I'm good. That's what I mean. Like some people have this fear of protein. I don't think you have to have that fear. What I mean is just like, as long as you do a pattern, if you stay in a certain pattern over time, I think you'll be okay, right? So that's how your body makes glucose from protein. In extreme cases, if you're only eating like 100% fat, your body will actually make glucose from fat. So that is kind of a crazy thing where your body will do whatever it takes to survive. Okay, so every time you're getting more weight on, you're getting more body fat, that's your body trying to store that energy for a later use. That's all it is. Your body doesn't know about, like, well, I guess your mind does know about how you feel about your physical appearance, but I think your hormones and the system where your body fat storage, it's just programmed a certain way to your fat storage is stored energy. It's it's preparing you for a time when you don't have food, because that's how we evolved. That's what it is, right? And the only way to unlock that again is to reduce your insulin. There's two ways you can reduce insulin. You can stop eating carbohydrates and sugar, and it's particularly refined carbohydrates and refined sugars and corn syrup and everything else. And by the way, corn syrup is in almost everything. Okay, so if you look at a bottle of ketchup, there's corn syrup in it. If you look, I mean, really, if you do keto, you have to check, especially at the beginning, you check every label on every single thing you're eating if you're eating things with labels, because you will see, oh my God, there's sugar and corn syrup in this. Like it's kind of mind blowing, actually. And one other trick they do is serving. So you'll pick up a package of something, and you'll think it'll be low carb, but there'll be like 10 servings, you know. So they trick you that way. So you have to look at that stuff too. The industry is pretty clever. All right, so let's talk about some keto basics as far as they talked about the macronutrient ratio. It's basically between 70 to 80% calories from fat, 15 to 25% calories from protein, and around 5% calories from carbs or less. There's a subset of the keto community. This is a subset now. Now I'm going to diverge for a second. They are called carnivore keto people, and they only eat meat. Okay. Now, what they do is, it's quite amazing. Actually, I was doing a lot of research on this. They only eat red meat mainly. Okay. They don't even really eat chicken that much, and they eat red meat, and they fry up animal fat and eat that. Okay. Now, what's crazy about it? It sounds insane, right, to most people, but you look at the results from the people that are doing this, and these people have like no body fat. It's insane. Okay, so it tells you something about like carbohydrates and all that, right? It's one part about it. Two is they're not just eating all protein; they're eating fatty meats, plus they're actually eating fats. A lot of them still eat dairy, or they still eat some like zero carb fatty foods, right? So basically a zero carb fatty food is butter. So here's the mind-blowing thing for some people in this chat right now. And I'm not even looking at the chat. You can see my screen. I'm not looking at it. Because I just want to get through this and we'll take a question.
Well,
the mind-blowing...
Go ahead, sorry.
Right? Low-fat food is pretty much one of the worst things you can possibly eat. Okay? There's two reasons why. One is because almost all low-fat food has double the sugar. Okay? So, and two is, there are studies, there's a couple here, okay, that I can show you, and there's many more of these. There's a ton out there. The science is on the side of fat not causing cardiovascular disease, actually. Okay, so that's the example, right? So there's no reason to cut it out. Number one, right? If you are cutting your carbohydrates, here's the problem: if you eat a lot of carbohydrates and you eat a lot of fat at the same time, which is what most Americans do, let's be honest, you will get fat because your body is not going to burn that fat. It's going to store every ounce of it. Okay, so that's pretty much like, that's why if you're eating a high-fat diet, you cannot also eat a high carbohydrate. That just doesn't work. Okay, so think about that. So when it comes to diets, right? Okay, so there are two things I want to get into this because I saw this in the stream chat actually earlier. So I want to talk about this, and let's talk about cholesterol and heart disease because this is pretty fascinating. This is one that, like, the last 3 months I've been going hardcore on because I got 2 different times I got blood work done this year, and I really, really wanted to understand what those numbers meant before I even took it to my doctor, right? Or before I listened to him, because I'll be honest with you, my doctor I was going to was fat, and I had a consultation with him. This is no disrespect because I'm used to be fat. I'm still a little, like, technically, I don't think I'm overweight. My BMI is like 24 and a half, so I'm right around that, like teetering on normal and overweight, right? So anyway, I'm not just, but my point is, I personally am not going to go to a doctor who's going to counsel me on nutrition and weight loss who is overweight. That's just, maybe it's, I don't know. That's what I'm saying, okay? I need someone that knows more about this stuff than me, or at least as much, and I don't know that much because I've been only doing this 6 months, so I can tell you, right? So I was going to this doctor. I saw him a month ago, and he said, "You look like a different person." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "How did you lose all the weight?" And I didn't want to get into this keto thing because doctors think, like, fat is going to kill you and all this stuff, right? They still have this mentality from the 1960s. So, and they're not, doctors, like, especially the older doctors, in my experience, are not like researching. I can't generalize all of them. I'm sure there's some that are. But a lot of them, let's say, are not researching all the modern science studies, and they're not going to the conferences and scientific conferences about this. They're just going on what they learned in medical school 30 years ago, which is this information, right? That's fine. I mean, it's not like they're bad people. So he said, "What did you do to lose the weight? Did you exercise a lot?" I said, "No." He said, did you cut your calories? I said, "No." I said, I didn't talk about the fat thing. I just told him I cut my carbs, right? And he said, "Oh, okay." He says, "Oh, yeah." He said, "That worked for some people." And then he just kind of didn't say anything, right? So when I got the blood work done, I wanted to make sure that I understand the numbers. So I started reading some books. So I read a book. I listed it here called Cholesterol Clarity. It's by an MD. His name is Dr. Eric Westman, and another guy named Jimmy Moore, who's like a keto expert. He's been doing keto for like 15 years or something like that. So so there's that. I read that book, and then I just started watching a bunch of like talks on YouTube and reading some studies about what actually causes heart disease. Because there's a bunch of studies that shows that saturated fat doesn't cause heart disease. So then I said, okay, well, so what does cause heart disease, right? So a lot of people think, and most of you probably do, because this is what we're taught in media, I guess, is that HDL and LDL are cholesterol. Okay, so we call them good and bad cholesterol. Right. This terminology has come from the current industry that has brought you the low-fat diet, by the way. Okay, so and the current state of obesity we have. So what these two things are they're called lipoproteins. Okay, they are not cholesterol. They transport things. One of the things they transport is cholesterol. Okay, the other things they transport are triglycerides. Okay, so triglycerides are stored fat, basically, okay? And the reason how you store fat is through sugar and carbohydrate consumption. That's how you store the fat. Okay, so if you don't eat the carbs, okay, you're not going to store the fat. That's how keto works, basically. Okay, so now maybe there's probably some threshold of amounts. I mean, I guess if you just stuck your face to the point where like you're just gorging yourself, that maybe I don't know. But generally, this is how it works, right? So triglycerides are stored fat. So what it does is their HDL, what they call the good cholesterol, which again is not cholesterol, is a lipoprotein which goes around in your bloodstream and takes the unused cholesterol and transports it back to your liver to be processed and excreted, basically. That's what it does. It's a protein that carries cholesterol. The LDL is a protein that carries cholesterol from your liver to your cells. That's what it does. Both are totally natural. You need both of them to survive, because every cell in your body needs cholesterol to survive, and your brain needs a shit ton of it. Okay? So, nothing wrong with either one of those two things. That's how your body is designed. Okay? So, what the interesting thing is, the reason why people think HDL is the good cholesterol and LDL is the bad cholesterol, again, they're not even cholesterol, okay, is that since LDL is the lipoprotein particle that is carrying it to your cells, it's also the one that carries cholesterol to your arteries, okay? Now, what's interesting about that is your arteries don't get clogged by cholesterol by themselves. Like, your body excretes extra cholesterol it doesn't need, like through bowel movements, through waste, things like that. Okay, it's not just like you just eat a bunch of bacon and your arteries get clogged. That's not how it works. The reason why you get cholesterol in your arteries is because your arteries get damaged, and cholesterol is actually a healing substance. Okay, cholesterol is a foundation of all your cells, so you need cholesterol for repair in all your body. Okay. So what it does is you get cracks in your arteries now, not caused by cholesterol. So the cholesterol is basically like, oh, just filling in the cracks, because we can't have arteries that are, broken, right? You'll die. So cholesterol is like the fireman, okay? And the cracks in your arteries are like the fire, okay? So what we do is we look at a lipid profile panel, which is cholesterol, and we say, oh, you have a lot of cholesterol, so therefore, you're going to get heart disease. It's literally blaming the fireman for the fire. Okay? So the doctors, most doctors, now I go to a doctor who does know about all this stuff. That's why I go to him. I switched to him. I had to research it myself. He lives 90 minutes from me, so in order to go see my doctor, I have to travel an hour and a half. But that's how serious I am about wanting people who actually know what the hell they're talking about. So anyway, so what causes cracks in your arteries? Well, inflammation causes cracks in your arteries. Okay, that's what causes it. Right? There are two major things that cause inflammation. Number one thing is sugar. Okay, and that's why you get reduced pain when you cut the sugar. And so sugar, actually, when it gets into your gut, okay, it creates endotoxins in your gut that latch on to LDL particles, okay? So, and what they do is, so now these endotoxins latch on to LDL particles, right? And now the particles no longer have enough room for the normal things they carry, which are healthy, right? Now the spaces are being taken up by these endotoxins, which are created by sugar and other inflammatory things, which I'll get into in a second, right? And then the particles shrink in size. Because of that, they actually shrink, okay? And they call that small LDL particles, or pattern B. So there's two types of LDL particles, pattern A and pattern B, okay? Pattern A is the all-natural, they call them big, fluffy LDL particles. There's nothing wrong with them. In fact, there are studies that show that high levels of pattern A are beneficial for you, okay? It's kind of mind-blowing for some people, probably, that think that all the LDL is bad if you know about cholesterol panels. So pattern B, though, is small enough to break through your arteries, your arterial wall. Okay, pattern A is not. So what happens is pattern B will actually damage your arteries. Okay, so a high number or a majority of pattern B, small, they call them small, dense LDL particles, is a sign that you have an increased risk of getting breakdowns in your arteries, which, guess what that means? Your cholesterol is going to repair it, right? Which is going to cause an increase in cholesterol in your arteries, right? So therefore, it's not cholesterol that is bad, okay? So that's what I wanted to talk about, cholesterol. So you have to look at the cholesterol as a fireman. What the hell is causing the fire, right? One thing is sugar and refined carbohydrates. That causes an insane amount of inflammation, okay? The other thing which causes arguably even more, but it's right there, when you look at the study, is hydrogenated oils and vegetable oils. So that's the only part about eating out that drives me nuts, is like what they cook the food in. So shit like vegetable oils, canola oil, all that stuff, all those which are not even vegetables, it's just like processed garbage, okay? They're called polyunsaturated fats, okay? They're the worst things you can ever cook with, okay? So the reason why is because the way that saturated fat works is basically it has no, this is unscientific, my explanation, but when I'm explaining it's true, because I'm not a scientist. But basically it has no available spots to be oxidized, okay? Meaning, so when these things get oxidized, okay, when your cells get oxidized, basically they turn rancid, okay? And they become inflammatory. That's what causes this inflammation, is oxidation, okay? So polyunsaturated fats, so monounsaturated fats means that this has one space to become oxidized, right? So monounsaturated fats are like avocado oil, things like that, okay? So you can cook with those things fairly safely. But polyunsaturated fats have multiple spaces to be oxidized, okay? And they usually have lower smoke points, which means when you cook with a polyunsaturated fat, they start smoking at a lower temperature than saturated fats, okay? And because of that, when they start smoking, they actually get oxidized, and that causes damage. That's what actually causes inflammation. That's one of the things. So one of the best things you can cook with is saturated fats, like butter. So if you cook with like natural grass-fed butter, like you have no chance of oxidation. In fact, butter, there are two vitamins that they claim people are most deficient in, which is D3 and K2, right? And they claim that those two vitamins are like the most, I don't know how scientific this is. It sounds like, to me, this up in the air. But they claim like this is the most cancer-preventing vitamins. I always get skeptical about that stuff. But anyway, so one of the things that's in the world that's highest in those two vitamins is butter, actually. So, yeah, so cook with the butter and no more vegetable oils and canola oil. So basically sugars, vegetable oils, canola oils, and trans fats. So trans fats are unnatural trans fats, which are hydrogenated polyunsaturated fat oils, okay? So what they do is they actually hydrogenate these polyunsaturated fat oils, and they make, so margarine for the whole existence like was made of this shit, right? So if you think about it, people were told to eat margarine, and margarine was full of trans fats and actually is breaking down your cells and your arteries, which is causing heart disease, okay? So what we're told is totally like insane. Think about the process, right? We're told to eat this shit. We keep getting sicker and sicker and fatter and fatter. We go to the doctor. They prescribe a drug, right, to lower your cholesterol. There's a study right here. Show this. I'm going to show you this. Now, this is like crazy here, okay? All right. Another huge analysis. Okay, I think there was like 68,000 people in this study, okay? This study, I'm not going to go over the whole thing. What it showed, let's go to the conclusion, okay? And this blew my friend's mind, who I was trying to convince about that. He read the study, he was like, what the hell? Okay, our review provides the first comprehensive analysis of the literature about the association between LDL-C, which is the cholesterol inside the LDL, and the mortality in the elderly. So this was done in elderly, all right? So the cholesterol hypothesis, which is what was created by Ansel Keith, predicts that LDL cholesterol, which is the cholesterol inside the LDL, not the LDL itself, so I want to clarify that, will be associated with increased all-cause and cause cardiovascular disease, right? Our review has shown either a lack of an association or an inverse association between elevated LDL, right, LDL-C, cholesterol, and mortality. If you look at this study, less than 50% of people who died of heart disease in this study had elevated LDL. That means that majority of people in this 68,000 people study, okay, had what they consider normal LDL ratios. So basically, what this study shows is that we're looking at the wrong things, okay? So when you get a blood lipid panel, you get your blood work back, they're just going to give you this generic-ass LDL, HDL, things like that. Now, high HDL is good because HDL actually removes excess cholesterol and excretes it, right? So it's a good thing, okay? I'm not saying that. I'm not saying LDL is a bad thing either, but small dense LDL is a bad thing. So if you go to a doctor, you want to go to a doctor who's going to give you a blood test which will show you your actual particle sizes. So I've gotten that done for me, right, recently. So that's something you can look into. So that's, I don't know if how much you've thought about this stuff, Brand, but this is like the last 3 months I've been like obsessed about this stuff.
I'll be honest with you. This is way technical and way scientific and way deep. And this is nothing that I've ever looked into or ever thought about or ever done. So, but it's good for you to speak it, get it out, do like this lecture on it. I post it. Whoever has that same passion for stuff like this, that they can enjoy it. I am way more casual about it, but this is good.
So this addresses the common misunderstanding about the ketogenic diet, that it's going to clog your arteries and you're going to die of a heart attack. That's pretty much what I'm addressing here. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, I'll shut up now about cholesterol. Okay. But I really wanted to show like that the information we are being given as a society, right, is there's so much scientific data out there that disproves this stuff. The problem is, in order for you to get a consensus around the world about this stuff, right? Like this stuff that was put in place 50 years ago is so hard to change at a macro level, you know, that you'll have lawsuits if your doctor like starts saying, "Oh, you don't need to go on this drug," right? Like malpractice lawsuits. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of like systemic problems when it comes to this. So there's a cultural thing where it's so slow to change the mindset of all this stuff, but all the information is out there, like all of it. There's a great thing on YouTube by this guy who did blood work on himself every 3 days for like 6 months, and then experimented him and his twin sister about how much cholesterol they ate, and then they would track for 3 days, and they would track the results, and he found between him and his sister an inverse pattern. The more cholesterol he ate, the lower his cholesterol numbers went down. So my point is, there's all kinds of stuff out there. Okay, all right. So getting back to keto. So I know people might be like, "What the hell's going on here?" But
I need to warn you. I need to go to bed soon.
All right. So what I wish I knew right at the beginning. We can talk about that. So I wish I knew that. I wish I knew not to. I don't know how to say this properly, but I wish I knew now what I knew about wish I knew then what I know about calories, actually, because I'm concerned, like, by not even considering my calories. I just didn't count them, right? I'm like, well, maybe did I eat too little? Like, maybe did I eat? I don't know, right? So I'm like, how? So now I started freaking out, like, oh, did I slow my metabolism down and all this stuff? I don't know, you know what I mean? So I would say for me, I've lost 10 pounds in the last 6 weeks, and I started being a little conscious about not eating too little calories. So I would actually try to eat enough, you know, like try to eat more, like, because I started getting worried, and I was like, okay. So then I was like, well, maybe if I start lifting weights, it'll just all make sense, and I can just go back to listening to my body, you know. So the keto thing. There's something you can take, and maybe Brent, this is something you might want to look into because you're doing a lot of performance-based stuff.
Yep.
It's called exogenous ketones.
Okay.
And that there's a lot of studies done on exogenous ketones. Basically, they're ketones that you can consume in a drink or something, right? That's basically what they are, and they go straight as energy. Like your body doesn't have to produce them or anything like that, right? So when I first started this, I have a friend who learned about the ketogenic diet from this guy, Dr. Dom D'Agostino, who's like the leading researcher on exogenous ketones. So he has this patent, and I'll show you the website. And I don't get anything for it. I'm just showing you guys. And this company uses his patent that he has. He's a research scientist in the University of South Florida, and basically they make these exogenous ketone products. So he said, hey, like, to get into this keto thing easy, right? Like, you can kind of hack your system. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, there's a bunch of science on it. Go look it up. He sent me a bunch of stuff, right? So I said, okay. So I said, that sounds cool. I'm into like hacking, like, you know, that kind of stuff. So he said, dude, just take like one of this in the morning and then like, you know, once a day. And then in the afternoon, take this. They have like a meal replacement one, right? And so like twice a day for like 3 or 4 days. And like, he's like, I bet you that gets you into ketosis very quickly, and you won't have the side effects. Because some people have side effects of keto, like they get low energy, right? They feel like not that good because you're cutting down your energy source. Like obviously, it's probably going to happen to you, right? So this stuff will actually put you into a state of ketosis in an hour. So normally it takes 3 days to get into ketosis on average if you do the ketogenic diet properly. You can take this, not even be doing ketogenic diet, and it will put you into a state of ketosis. Okay. So now, if you start eating carbs, it'll get kicked right out. I mean, okay. But so if you take this stuff at the beginning of doing keto, like you don't have to take it long term. I take it once in a while now, but it's basically like I take the meal replacement more than anything because it's just easy for like a shake, and it just gives you a lot of potassium and stuff like that, and fat and protein. Tastes good, but it has exogenous ketones. So there are athletes who consume exogenous ketones before they work out, even ketogenic athletes, and there's studies on it which show you like higher performance, right? So there's a lot of stuff going on right now about taking ketones in the world. So that's one tip I have if you want to look into it. If you're interested in this stuff, you can just do the diet. You don't need any of this stuff, by the way. Okay? But if you're interested in like speeding up the process, hacking your body a little bit, getting a quicker transformation of fat adaptation, this stuff can help. That's one thing. Another hack I have is if you guys like nuts out there, like if you like, a lot of people like cashews, peanuts, stuff like that. The bad news is you can't eat a lot of cashews on a ketogenic diet, but what you can eat is macadamia nuts, pecans, Brazil nuts. You can eat some almonds, even though I don't think they're the healthiest thing, and there's not enough time to get into that right now. But basically, so what I do is I carry around like a little container of macadamia nuts, pecans, and some Brazil nuts. That's what I added recently. So what I'll do is those particular 2 nuts are the highest fat to lowest carb ratio out of any nut in the world. Okay, so they're like a 1/4 cup, which is 12 macadamia nuts, is 22 grams of fat and like 2 grams of carbs. It's like a 10-to-1 ratio. So you put that in your app, like a 1/4 cup of macadamia nuts, and like you eat a 1/2 cup, you're at like 44 grams of fat to 4 grams of carb. It makes it very easy to, this was my hack, like one of my little tips. Because if I just consume those nuts with a meal, right, as like a side, that makes it so I can eat like a more protein-based meal, okay? But the nuts actually give me more fat than the protein-based meal I'm eating, right? So it's an easy way. So some people can't handle dairy. Like some people's body, it's not good for them, right? Mm-hmm. So fine. So like you can eat non-dairy high-fat things. So macadamia nuts and pecans are 2 examples, right, of that. So that's some of my little tips is nuts as a snack. Carry that around. Let's see. Yeah, if you like bacon, this is the diet for you, man. It's like bacon and butter. Like, man, for breakfast, you can eat like bacon and eggs. Like, you can eat coffee with heavy cream. When I go to Starbucks, I ask for heavy cream, like a side of heavy cream. You can do like all kinds of like crazy stuff, but just to get the fat. Dude, I made this dessert. I invented this dessert. Now, I would love like for people to try it out, but it has a raw egg in it, so I don't know. People say you can get salmonella poisoning, so be careful with that. But people eat raw cookie dough anyway, so it's basically a keto cookie dough. And really, what it is it's a stick of butter and a 1/2 cup of peanut butter, but all natural peanut butter. Unfortunately, a lot of the peanut butter is just they put sugar and these damn oils in it, so you get the all natural kind. Mm-hmm. And there are some sugar substitutes. Most sugar substitutes are pretty bad for you. There's one that's not. It's called erythritol. It's called a sugar alcohol, and it's basically like, I'm not going to get the science behind it, but basically your body doesn't process it. So the carbs that come from it, your body doesn't know what to do with it, and it just goes right to your colon and you poop it out. Right? So so what happens is this stuff tastes pretty sweet. So I just put this erythritol with some butter and some peanut butter and some of these Lily's chocolate chips, which was also made with erythritol, and like a raw egg. Beat that up, and it tastes like an insanely good chocolate chip cookie dough. And it's like butter and peanut butter. Okay? It's like super good. And like as a dessert, and I measure my blood ketones like a few times a week, depending on, I'm trying to test out what I'm eating and stuff, to play around. One day my blood ketones were at one level, right? And the next day after I had like half of that bowl, I ate like a half a stick of butter, right? My blood ketones were tripled. So like basically like the butter like tripled my ketones. Like when you become fat adapted, it just says butter, yes, like I can burn a ton of this off like as energy. It's like crazy. So anyway, so that's kind of an introduction to keto, what makes us fat, inflammation, cholesterol, integral theory, my story, your story, Brands. I don't know where to go. Before you go to bed, does anyone have any questions, or are you seeing any questions out there?
I've talked to the chat the whole time, kind of covered them. Yeah. But they didn't ask anything that was too hardcore. A lot of people have just been making comments.
Okay. So basically, to wrap it up for me, because I know you said you were considering going to paleo. That's like, if something is coming from nature, right? If it's not processed, it's probably pretty good for you for the most part. Like most part. Okay. so think about how human beings evolved. Just think about that. Like if eating animal fat, right, and eating things like how we evolved was unsustainable, like we wouldn't have been able to survive. If going long periods of time without eating was unsustainable, we wouldn't be able to survive. But one last thing I want to add, then this is my last thing. Sorry, I wanted to add this. And how the mental focus works, and how maybe as a gamer, a professional gamer, I would love to work with a professional gamer on this, actually, as like a case study, and see what happens, like and test this out as a hypothesis. But basically, when you go into a state of ketosis, your senses are heightened, and your cognitive ability is increased. And if you think about that from an evolutionary perspective, if you went 5 days without eating, right, 3 days without eating, right, and you had to go and hunt, you wouldn't be able to hunt effectively if you had no energy and if you had impaired cognitive ability, right? So think about a hunter who has like a bow and arrow or something, right? You have to be super focused, and your cognitive ability and your energy level has to be so high to get that food to survive. That's how we evolved, basically, right? So that's to me, that's the evolutionary explanation about why when you're in ketosis you have sustained higher energy levels and better cognitive ability. Like you can, there's a lot of stuff out there about that. I have a personal example, but there's a billion examples. In fact, one of the people that does this is, now I don't know if he does it for a sustained lifestyle. I don't know that, but I know that LeBron James does go in and out of ketogenic diet, and there's some stuff about there, LeBron James keto. I don't know. That could be bullshit. There's just somebody told me. I don't know if that's true. But because I know there was a ketogenic nutritionist who was working with them, I think a year or two ago or something like that. So anyway, so that's a little bit about that, how ketogenic diet can enhance your cognitive abilities and why that may be from an evolutionary perspective. It's just the way our bodies are trained. A side effect of that could be some people experience insomnia, actually. Some people experience, everyone's body is different. Some people say, like, I got so much energy, I can't sleep, right? And that's bad because you need sleep to actually burn the fat. You burn fat mostly in your sleep anyway. And you need sleep to lower your cortisol levels, which you need that. It's stressing you out, right? So, but some people say, hey, it totally regulates my sleep. So it's different people. So that's why I said, like, everyone's body reacts differently to this stuff. There's no one size fits all to anything. Yeah, you can, like, do things like meditation or take a melatonin, and maybe that might help if you really want to. Or maybe eat a little bit of carbs at night, like not kick yourself out of ketosis, but maybe like eat, maybe 20 grams of carbs or something, and it might probably calm you down, something like that. So there's different people react to different things. But so yeah, if there's no other questions, that's all I got.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on and doing this. I know it's a lot of information to go through, and hopefully people can dissect this. And I'll put this on my YouTube channel for people to listen to and reference. But not trying to cut it short, but I got to go to bed.
No, it makes sense. So I'll look at the stream chat and just say thanks to everybody who stuck around.
Okay.
And thank you guys. Appreciate that. And it was a lot of information. Hopefully you got something out of it. Hopefully it's enough for maybe you to go research on your own too. There's some any of the keto books out there. If you go on Amazon and look up keto, there's books out there. Those books will all tell you how to do it like good. There's YouTube channels out there that will tell you, like there's one called Keto Connect. It's also a cooking channel, but they also teach you. I'm going to write this guy in the channel. He's one of my guys I learn a lot from. He's a fitness instructor, and he also does keto and stuff. So if you're into fitness and keto, he's like a really good guy. So that's his name. You just put that on YouTube, you'll find everything you want to know about this guy. So those are my recommendations. Any that's it for me. Sorry. All
right. Well, I'm gonna close out the stream with Tony Perkis for about a minute. Do you know who Tony Perkis is?
Tony Perkis. No, I don't. Who is that?
Tony Perkis is played by Ben Stiller in the movie Heavyweights.
Okay.
Did you ever see that? Did you ever see that movie?
Yeah. No, I haven't seen it. No.
All right. Well, I'm just gonna play this clip, and that's gonna end it, and that's gonna demonetize this video. But that's okay.
Oh! Do you want to see the before picture? I can show you that, and then I'll.
Oh yeah. Do that.
Okay. I'll show you the. I'm sending it to my computer right now.
All right. And while you're doing that, I'm gonna play some Tony.
Okay.
Can you smell it? There's a life force in here tonight. I see potential. I see a famous rap artist. Being an only child, educated entirely by private tutors my whole life, I'm looking forward to interacting with children for the first time. I'm gonna teach you, and I bet you might teach me a little something also. Those of you from Western Pennsylvania probably know my father, Tony Perkis Sr., the lighting fixture king. All the lights you'll see around this camp have been donated by him. But I'm gonna do old Dad one better. I'm not gonna give you a light. I'm gonna show you the light. Hey, who wants to be on TV, huh? That's Kenny the cameraman. At age 12, I weighed 319 pounds. I eat success for breakfast with skim milk. That is out of here, mister! Come on, you devil lug! I'm dogging it, Pat! I'm dogging it! You think I'm crazy? I'm not crazy. I just believe in you.
I'll stop it there.
So that's my picture. That was right before I started keto. You can see that.
Well, yeah. That's the Troy I met. That's the Troy I knew for years.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, that's the 245. Yeah, that's about and that was about 43% body fat. So.
Damn, that's awesome. Congrats,
thank
man.
You.
Keep it up. Congrats.
Yeah. I'm going, man. I can't wait till I get the year results. I want to get to that. Those teens, my body fat in the teens. That'll be awesome.
It's 100% because I've been doing what you did, but also the workouts. So
yeah.
It's that's the difference. You don't have to do the workouts. It just speeds up the process, in my opinion. But
yeah, I'm going to start. Yeah, again. Yeah.
All right, man. But all right, have a good night. I'm about to go to bed, and thanks for everything.
And thank you for hosting. This is awesome, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, anytime.
All right, thank you.
See you. Bye.
Here. Bye.
Skype is over. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you want more Tony Perkins, you can go on. You can go on Gmail, not Gmail. You can go on YouTube. I will see you guys later. I was gonna do a before and after pic for me, but I can't find a before pic. So it seems kind of stupid to do before and after, but not have a before pic. I just looked at my whole computer, and I don't have any pics of me on my computer. So that's funny. Check here. I mean, like, not like the before picture I was looking for. I was actually going to show you guys like belly pics. Before belly pics I took in December. I like to be as critical of myself in that regard as possible, just to use as motivation. Shit, man, I don't see it. Anyway, have a good night, everyone. Have a good night. Later.